met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face. The blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Episode of Subconscious Realms. I'm your host, General Lee, and tonight, this man needs no introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honour to present to you one of the hosts of Fire Theft Radio, Chuck.
What's
Good
going
evening,
on?
Chuck.
Hey, good man. How you doing? Good morning over here, but
Good,
I'm
mate.
sure evening over there. You know?
Yeah, it's dark, mate. It's dark about 4 o'clock now, so.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's an honour, mate. Been a fan of your show for, well, since it started.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the Omar, your co-host? Is he? Is he okay?
Oh yeah, he's good.
Good.
Yeah, he's good. He's just really busy. He's trying to become a nurse, so he's doing like an accelerated program, and he's super busy.
All right, so it's like studying, right?
Oh yeah. He's studying, trying to become a nurse, and the winter programs or the fall programs are super condensed. So he's pretty busy doing that. That's why I'm pumping out shows right now on my own. But yeah, he's still part of the show and everything. He's just kind of a busy man right now.
Sound. I hope it all works out for him. I'm sure it will.
Oh yeah, smart man.
Indeed. Before we start, do you want to plug where people get hold of you?
Yeah. So, I'm Chuck from Fire Theft Radio, and I've been doing this show for about 6-7 years, and kind of started because we were both, Omar and I, were in a kind of like a Christian cult sort of situation where we were kind of exposed to a lot of bad doctrine, and we had a lot of questions, and when we asked questions about certain verses in the Bible, they were kind of like, no, don't ask those questions. You're studying too much. You shouldn't know too much about that stuff. Or there was always an excuse. And, me and Omar, being the curious guys that we are, we kind of continued our research, and it just led into a lot of things that, led us out of that organization and kind of over time turned into what we call today Fire Theft Radio. But we had a definitely interesting young years of ours doing a lot of weird things. Just for myself, speaking for myself, our family kind of was like practitioners of witchcraft, and we
really?
were, yeah. And we did, some conjuring and some Buddhism, some Catholicism. I mean, we were a mixed bag of a lot of stuff, and that kind of led into, I think one of the reasons you wanted to have me on your show is to talk about demons. And so practicing all that occult magic and things like that definitely led to some supernatural experiences in our lives. And by consequence, kind of gave me a lot of knowledge about what demons are and what they can do in people's lives, and how they manifest into our natural world. And also, started reading like books like Demons about made by Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Heiser, which we've had on our show, and started to realize that these are entities existed for a long period of time, but they're not what people think they are, And so, I don't know if you want to dive into it right now, or if you have other questions.
Yes, mate. You go for it, please.
Okay, cool. And so, like you said, you wanted me to come on here and kind of discuss demons. And I think one of the important things to let people know right off the bat is demons are not fallen angels, and that's kind of like a common misconception in the Christian world. Like, oh, demons are the fallen angels, the the third of the angels that came from that Satan kind of pulled from heaven, and they get that from
Yeah.
the Book of Revelations and things like that. But the Book of Revelation, sorry, I was saying with the S, but it's not. And But when you start looking at the history, really, of where demons came from, and you listen to the language, like in the New Testament, about demons, it's actually not. It's very clear that they're not fallen angels, and to not get into the long story, but we understand now that they are Nephilim spirits. These are the spirits that were of those hybrids and giants and the offspring of the fallen watchers mating
Yeah.
with women in Genesis 6, and
Yeah.
uh, the flood wiped them out, and a lot of those spirits kind of remained in limbo, kind of to and fro, and we see that in the New Testament where it says that these spirits kind of uh, roam in dry places. They're going to and fro, looking for bodies to inhabit. And
Yeah.
the reason they want to do that is because they want to be able to experience the physical things that they were doing before. And if you know any history about like what the Nephilim were up to, I mean, they were the pretty much the people that propagated, or you could say, really pushed depravity to another level. We're talking about cannibalism. We're talking about drugs. We're talking about sexual depravity. We're talking about like bestiality. All these things came from the Nephilim and the Watchers, because they were doing all these hybrids, and thus made these evil creatures that had to be wiped out during the flood, and
Yeah.
part of those were also what Joshua was dealing with, the giants that Joshua was dealing with. And kind of that's one of the reasons that he had to eradicate like all of those tribes, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
important to bring up before we get into demons, because a lot of atheists and things like that will bring up those verses and say, look how maniacal God was, telling Joshua to kill women, children, and everyone that was in that land that Joshua was conquering, because the assumption is that those were people, regular people like you and I.
Yeah.
But when we start looking at the names of them and their descendants, and Gary Wayne can really open this up and give you all the names of the tribes and all their bloodlines and everything,
Yeah.
with his book Genesis 6 Conspiracy. He's connected all those lines, all those bloodlines, all the way till today, like to the supposed royal bloodlines we have today.
Yeah.
But that's what Joshua was dealing with. He was dealing with these hybrids, these evil entities that needed to get wiped out. And
Yeah.
the remnants of those, if you read the book of Enoch, the remnants of those wiped out Nephilim are the unclean spirits, these spirits left over, that we call demons.
Yeah.
And those demons today, I mean, they are very real, and they can manifest themselves in human bodies in a very physical manner. And that's something that I dealt with from a very young age with exorcisms. Is known like that's known.
Exorcisms.
Yeah, exorcisms is the name they give it in the Catholic Church, but we in the Christian community or the Protestant community, we called it deliverance ministry.
Deliverance ministry.
Yeah,
Oh, goodness.
deliverance. And so yeah, dealing with that, kind of like like face to face was another. I mean, that was very interesting, and
Oh, I could imagine that would be. I could imagine it being quite frightening, actually, especially if you're not knowing what they actually look like. It's just
right.
what they show.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I always kind of imagined what they would look like. Because here's the funny part. Like I talked about it one time, I think, with Tracy Yates on my show. Um, if you think back, like all the creatures that existed that we think are mythological, it's possible that a lot of those might have not been myth.
Yeah.
Like these little hybrid creatures, and it's funny because they're animals that were also apparently crossed over in these ancient stories. And if that were the case, and those had spirits, sometimes the way people manifested, which means a demon would show up in their body, they would incorporate this spirit in their body. They
Yeah.
would contort their body so badly that they would literally look and sound like a creature, you know?
Yeah.
And Tracy Yates kind of brought up a interesting, possibility that it's possible that the reason that people contort so much is because those demons are trying to shape the body into what they used to look like, because that's why humans kind of contort and all that, because it's a spirit that is not designed to be in the human body,
Right.
and
Right.
and it's one of the reasons, like, their hands turn like claws, and they'll crouch over and their voice changes and stuff like that, which I did encounter in people as young as 12 years
Whoa.
old, and that was probably the scariest part, because you think it's all fake until you have a 12-year-old skinny little girl pick up a 180-pound man like nothing, just lift him up and just
Ooh.
and so if you want to call that some kind of scientific anomaly, I would love to study the brain and body when that person's fully possessed with a demon. That'd be a great study. But one of the things that I would see encountering that is just like, that's not possible for that young 12-year-old skinny little girl that barely weighs 100 pounds to lift up somebody that's 200 pounds like nothing. Like, it's just, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And then
No.
and I'm a pretty big dude now, and I can't do that. So um sometimes they would speak different languages that they didn't know. Like, the community we worked with was primarily like a Latino community, so they spoke Spanish, you know.
Yeah.
But some of these demons, like, for me, for example, I speak pretty good Portuguese and French, and
Sound.
yeah, and I would try and give them commands, sometimes in different languages, and they would understand or even respond, in different
That's
languages.
that
And
would be pretty. If that was me in that position, it would throw me so much
oh yeah,
to
oh yeah,
hear that.
it's definitely freaky. I mean, when I got into it, it was not easy. It took me a while to really, like, settle into that kind of ministry, because I started very young. I was probably how old was I? Like 17 or 18 when I started,
How long did you do it for, Chuck?
I did that probably up until, like, I was 25 or 26. I'm 36. I'm 36 now, so that was well over a decade ago.
Yeah. Would you
And
do it again? Like,
what was that?
would you do it again, or is it like something?
You know what? It's not something I'll be looking for. I'll tell you that.
Right.
But,
So it must be pretty hefty for you to say that.
yeah, it is. And I'm never gonna say never, because I don't know. I could be in a situation where that has to happen, and I've seen it happen so much where you don't expect to be in these supernatural situations, and you end up being in them, and you're just kind of like, well, I guess I have to do something about this right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but you know, the thing before I got into that, that I already had an introduction into the spiritual world, because, like, my mother started practicing the occult, and then got us involved at a very young age. I'm talking, I was like 11 or 12, and we were doing little rituals, and probably one of the first ones that fascinated me that she did was she lost a very expensive jewelry, and she knew about one of the spirits that she would pray to or conjure. It was like a locator spirit, like it's like
Right.
and so it would find things for you if you gave it an offering, and the way she would conjure it is she would do a very specific prayer, and I can't, at this point I don't remember what is the offering, but it was something, and and sometimes she would buy, like, blood sacrifices, like chickens or different things,
I was just going to say that, actually. I was just going to mention, would it be a blood sacrifice?
Yeah, it would be blood and money,
All right.
sometimes you would bury the money, sometimes you would give it to, of course, the shaman or whoever's doing the ritual, and of course, they got to make their money, of course, but
Yeah, yeah,
and so you give your offering, and she would pray to this spirit, and she would light a candle, and the you would continue to do this kind of like chant, and the
yeah.
flame would start pointing in the direction you need to go, like a GPS system,
Seriously.
Yeah, yeah. And
Phew.
she actually found what she was looking for. Like, she did it by just following the flame. You know what I mean?
I tell you what,
And
mate, that's some achievement. That.
I'm telling you, man, like, some of that stuff
Yeah,
is
yeah,
inexplicable. And again, if you want to call it chance, if you want to call it like, oh, that was just lucky, I'm like, well, that is a very high improbability,
yeah,
for
yeah.
a flame to point in the exact direction, in various directions, to guide her to the thing that she's looking for. You know
And
what I
to
mean?
find it, that's just it's mind blowing.
Indeed. And so at a young age, I was kind of like, all right, there's definitely something going on in the spirit world, And
Yeah,
she started doing different rituals for prosperity and for different things like that. But before that time, we did indeed prosper a lot financially,
yeah.
but the family was just riddled with like sickness and depression and
Whoa.
like supernatural activity at the house.
Yeah.
Two of my sisters tried to commit suicide.
Oh,
And
sorry about that, mate. Sorry.
no, they tried, they failed, but everything's good. But the point is that is a common thing that happens with people that practice magic. Is there's always like major tragedy, or you might get
Like a
what you
repercussions to everything you do. Like,
definite repercussions. And the worst part that my mom suffered was actually someone tried to murder her. And
oh,
the guy later explained and confessed that he actually was like, he didn't know what took him over. He just felt very angry that he hated her, and something inside him told him to kill her. And this was at her job. She used to work at a place where they make spas for people to go in, like
yeah,
those you know they the jacuzzis. And then he was lifting up a jacuzzi frame with a forklift, and then he just felt super angry. And he had that voice tell him, like, just drop that jacuzzi frame on her. And
fucking
he,
hell, mate.
yeah, man, and he did it. He dropped it on her head, and she suffered from really bad like brain damage, and like brain hemorrhaging.
Oh,
And
mate. I'm really
and
sorry to hear that.
yeah, yeah, and that's kind of when we were like, okay, something's wrong, and
Yeah, enough's enough, sort of.
yeah, and not to mention like the sleep paralysis, not to mention the I would wake up in the middle of the night, and I would see um like multiple shadows looking over me,
Oh,
and they would hold me down, and I'd feel completely paralyzed, and then they would move my bed. They would call my name and things like that. And so everyone was kind of experiencing that in the house, in their own room, and it was just getting out of control. So that, plus the depression, plus the sickness, plus someone's trying to murder my mom, wasn't a good outcome to oh, we were looking for prosperity. We had that, but we had all this other bad stuff also. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, believe it or not, one of the ladies that practiced witchcraft was like, yeah, you got some bad demons in you, so you're gonna have to go to church and look for
Bad
Jesus.
demons.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, bad demons is that. But it's disgusting, mate. I'm sorry what you've been through. All that. That would drive you crazy. That.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And so,
especially not knowing what could potentially happen.
yeah, so I highly suggest to people, like, when you get into the spiritual realm, like, there tends to be this idea that you can control what spirits you're dealing with, and they definitely sell you on that. If you just do
Yeah.
this or that, you can control these entities, and that's where demons start coming into your life. You're opening up these spiritual portals, and they start doing physical things in your life that might seem like natural things. Like if you talk about depression, or you talk about sleep paralysis, like a very general way, you're like, oh, everybody has that. But it's like, no, this is very focused and concentrated.
It's
And when
it's a different level, isn't it, like that?
Oh, definitely it is. And then that on top of these other things that were happening around the house. And so I knew early on that some stuff was happening. And so
Yeah.
right before we got into like going to church, the last thing that we tried to do, kind of like as a Hail Mary, occult ritual practice, was we went to this like high end, kind of like the most expensive kind of witch doctor we can find here in
Yeah.
Mexico. And she performed these rituals on us that were like absolutely like inexplicable.
Yeah.
For example, she started doing this like prayer kind of chant thing over me, and she put her hand over my like neck area.
Yeah.
And I felt like she was actually inside of my neck. It was really weird. Like very, very painful.
That
And
does sound weird.
oh, dude, very, very painful. And I felt her pulling something physical out of me. And I was like, what the heck what is she doing? And I turned around, and she had pulled like these big pieces of bone, and they were like dead bones. And she's like, oh, these are the dead bones of the witchcraft that was done on you. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And I was like, what? And I couldn't believe it, because I was like, maybe that was a sleight of hand situation, or
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Like I was just kind of like, I couldn't really explain that. But then she turned me around, and I was facing up on this bed, just kind of in my briefs.
Yeah.
And she did another thing, another chant with these like a kind of like a rosary sort of thing. And as soon as that rosary touched the middle of my chest, instantly, and I saw this happen right before my eyes, because I was curious, I was looking all around. My whole body like expelled like so much salt, like so much salt. It just
Salt.
started. Yes. And then it started coming out just in like droves, like a lot. And I just kept like literally appearing and falling off my body. And she was like, don't be scared. This is because people use a lot of salt to do witchcraft, to make your
Do,
life in a sense bitter, or to make
do they
you.
use it like like just say for a circle? I've seen it read and seen that they use a circle. They put salt in the circle. Is it like a barrier?
Yeah, in this aspect, what in especially in the Latino community, like if you want to do a bad ritual on someone and then have them have bad luck,
Yeah.
um, in Spanish, it's actually called uh, "I want their life to be salty." The translation directly would mean salty. And it means
Right.
in Spanish you would say salado. Like when you say have bad luck, you're like,
Salado.
that person, esa persona está salada, like they have bad luck. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it just, the literal translation means that person's very salty. But in the actual rituals, we do use a lot of salt and different minerals to do witchcraft. And that does actually tie back to like a lot of the rituals from the Watchers and Nephilim and things like that.
Right.
And so, I mean, to this day, we are practicing rituals that happened thousands and thousands of years ago. We were just unaware of where they come from.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, like it was kept coming off, and I stood up kind of in a panic, and I was touching myself, and it was literally just coming out of nowhere, and it kept falling off, kept falling off. I kept getting it out of my hair, and it was like just coming out of nowhere. And so I knew like this is definitely a spiritual thing. And but things got better for a little bit, and then they got
Yeah.
worse, because you're trying to fight magic with magic. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so we ended up going to church, and uh, that's when we found this ministry that focused kind of on deliverance and expelling of demons. And we showed up like that after all that witchcraft and everything. And after a few services of participating in these deliverance ministries, um, um, all of that stuff went away. Like the depression was gone, the sicknesses went away. My mother's hemorrhaging stopped, and her brain actually internally shifted.
Oh,
Nobody did anything by itself, like it healed
that's
itself
good to hear, that,
completely.
mate. That's good to hear.
Yeah, indeed. And my dad was also dying of cirrhosis,
Oh,
and all of that was healed like instantly. You know what I mean? When we started going to these deliverance ministries, things. And so we kind of were like, okay, well, all of what we were experiencing was definitely spiritual in nature because it just went away, like it was gone.
yeah.
And that's when we started getting involved in like, well, you know, God helped us through this, and we had this supernatural experience of Him delivering us from all this evil. So that's when I got into the actual, expelling of demons myself. And I don't know if you have any questions you'd like to ask, but like specifically about demonic possession. But that was just kind of I just kind of mentioned it briefly earlier. I don't know if there's
Yeah.
anything else.
Well, I have actually. You know, the salt coming out of your body. That people might think, oh, it's just salt. To me, if I was sat or stood there and the salt coming off me and I don't know where it's coming from, that would be frightening.
Oh yeah, I think anything. What was pulled out of my mother was even worse. Like she saw it with her own
Ew.
eye. From her belly button, she pulled out like a rusty nail. Then she pulled,
What?
yeah, a rusty nail, and she pulled it out of her belly button. She saw that live, like in front of her. It was very painful. She also pulled out like a small frog, which is often used in witchcraft.
A small frog
Yeah.
from a body?
Yes, from her body. Yes, and
Oh,
that's the same situation where she was facing up and she was looking at it happening, and it's just like again, it, if it was sleight of hand, that's the best sleight of hand ever, but it's also very painful sleight of hand because it was hurting her body. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So she was feeling it and seeing it come out of her belly button, kind of thing. And then instantly be healed, like from her belly button right after. You know what I mean? So
It just sounds like madness, mate, doesn't it? But I
yeah,
mean, is it are both your parents fine now, and everybody else?
what was that?
Is both your parents and everybody else fine now?
Oh yeah, no, we're good. We're
Oh
not.
well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear,
Yeah,
that, mate.
no, we're definitely blessed now. So, but this was our background, so we kind of were like, no, these demons are not only real, but they manifest themselves in very physical ways. But moving forward, I started realizing, what I said. I don't know if I said it while we were recording, but that demons in the Bible were actually not fallen angels, right? And so, like I said earlier, they're part of these Nephilim spirits.
Yeah,
And so when we start looking at that, like I think you mentioned before the show the names of some demons. Do you want to bring those up,
yeah,
or we can kind of go through that?
yeah. I'll start from the top, mate. We've got Lucifer representing what White says pride.
Uh huh.
We've got Mammon. That's Mammon,
Hmm.
representing greed.
Yeah.
Got Asmodeus, representing lust.
Hmm.
Leviathan, representing envy. Beelzebub, representing gluttony. Satan, representing wrath.
Hmm.
And Belphegor, representing sloth.
Right.
Apologies if I butchered the names. Pronounced.
Yeah.
Apologies.
I mean, it's okay if you mess up a demon's name. Who cares, right?
Yeah, yeah.
No honor and respect for those
Nice
guys.
one.
But so some of those we can address. Like I was saying before the show, they're titles, and so we would have people manifest a demon, and we would ask the person, "What's the name? What's your name, demon?" And they would say, "Satan," for example.
Yeah, yeah.
And at the time we had limited understanding, and we were kind of like, "Whoa, Satan himself is here," kind of thing. But once we realize that Satan, if you do a little word study when it comes to those names in the Bible, Satan is a title, and it's often
Okay.
given to different spirits or Nephilim spirits or demons, because the title means the oppressor, someone who goes against you. And so when a demon says, "Oh, I am Satan," it is possible that he is a Satan or an oppressor, someone that is working against you or the will of God, which is
Yeah.
why he would call himself the Satan, or a Satan, And so we see that a lot, even in the Old Testament. Like, I tend to believe a little bit more on what Michael Heiser says in his book Unseen Realm, that the Satan in Job that was kind of like going from like the throne of God into earth and different things like that is not the Satan that we think is the classical Satan.
Yeah.
Um, he is a character that actually works with God to he's part of the council. And if people don't know what that is, I mean, that's a big
The
rabbit hole.
council.
But so there's just a quick thing so people don't know what it might be like, what is he talking about? A council, If you go
Yeah.
to the book of Kings, and if you go to like Deuteronomy 32, if you go to Psalms 80, Psalms 82, I could be misquoting that, 89, you'll see throughout the entire Old Testament, there are many occasions where God's actually working with a council,
Yeah.
and um, and the council can make decisions, and sometimes they make bad ones, and God calls them out for it. And I don't think people are aware of that, and it's kind of like a controversial subject because people tend to think like, well, God's 100% calling every single shot, and yeah, the outcome and His will is definitely happening in the end, but he also allows other people to participate in his will like human beings. Like, for example, we screw up every day. I guarantee you we don't follow God's will on a daily basis, but we make mistakes, but he still allows us to participate in his plan. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
such is the case in the spiritual world. There's these entities that he's given a certain amount of authority, um, and they're allowed to make certain decisions, and when they mess up, though, he calls them out. He's like, no, that's not a good idea. For example, in the book of Kings, they were trying to figure out how to get rid of, I forgot what the name of the king is. Ah, gosh, his name is it Kings or Samuel? Well, they're trying to get rid of this king. He's done. I think his name is Ahab. And they're like, hey,
Ahab.
yeah. And they were like, hey, man, let's get him out of here. How do we overthrow him? That's God talking to his council, and then they all start giving their ideas. They're like, well, maybe we can do this or maybe we can do that. And every time there was a bad idea, God was like, nope, nope, we're not doing that. And then one of them said, you know what? I can come in as a lying spirit and lie to the people and make its people turn against him and they will overthrow him.
Right. Okay.
And so then that council member that is in heaven, a divine figure, is using lying to get that Ahab out of there, which is very interesting because uh, that's something that we kind of fail to see in the Old Testament, that God uses actually lies or like sins or things that are considered sins, to
Yeah.
judge the unjust, okay? To judge the people that are already on the way out of like, oh, that's it. God's wrath is going to come over you. Sometimes he used other countries to overthrow Israel, because they were being horrible. So he's like, all right, well, now you're
Yeah.
going to get overthrown by, whatever country, and so he would use war to overthrow them, and then they would come
I
crying
was
back
just
to
gonna.
God.
I was just gonna say that. Then is this what the potential war?
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah. So yeah, it's yeah, sorry, Chuck. The book. What you speaking of? What was it called again? The book of what?
Which one? I'm
The
sorry.
do your most recent with Psalms 82 or 89.
Oh, the one where he's talking with his counsel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it's Psalms 82, Psalms
Psalms
89.
82.
Like if we go
Yeah.
to Psalms 80, like we'll do it right now. Actually, check it out if you don't mind.
Yeah. No problem, mate. What? So what is it you want search? So it's the book of what?
Psalms 82. And when these are the problems with like translation. If you never look things up and do a little bit of word study, this is why we have all these misunderstandings, like
Yeah.
demons are fallen angels kind of thing, because they don't look into the language of the Bible and the original context. But
Yeah, the
here we
original
go in
text. Yeah.
Psalms 82. It says, God stands in the divine assembly. That's, people are around him. Like, yeah, the divine council you'll see in other translations, and you'll see a variety of phrases to say he's in the midst of his congregation or things like that.
Yeah.
And he administers judgment in the midst of the gods. Okay, that's a very
Yeah.
important verse. So God is working with other entities that are lowercase g gods. Okay, lowercase g gods. All right. And then he says to them, how long will you judge unjustly and show favoritism to the wicked? Judge on behalf of the helpless and the orphan. Provide justice to the afflicted and the poor. Rescue the helpless and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. They do not know or consider. They go about in the darkness, so that all the foundations of the earth are shaken. I have said, you are gods, lowercase g gods, and sons of the Most High. All of you, however, will die like men and will fall like one of the princess of earth. Um, so right there, he's talking to these divine characters. Obviously, they're divine because some people like to say, oh, they're just kings of like the earth. No, he's telling them, you are like gods. You are lowercase g gods. You are spiritual entities, and you're gonna fall. I'm gonna have you die a man's death if you don't shape up. You guys are making very bad decisions. You're judging unjustly. You're letting the orphan, suffer too much. You're doing all these bad things that pretty much their job was to help the nations come to God, which they weren't doing. And that's part of the rebellion that we see in Genesis 6.
Yeah.
There's these entities doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. And then so then they create all these like demon characters. And so again, we see this happening a lot, and that all comes from that title, Satan. So
Yeah.
these at one point were satanic characters. In a sense, they were opposers of the will of
Yeah.
God. You know what I'm saying? And so that covers that Satan aspect. I think the other one that you mentioned was Lucifer. and
Lucifer. Yeah.
and then Lucifer just means light bearer. And that's of course the name that they gave to the main character that we call Satan, or the fallen entity. But
Yeah.
again, Lucifer is more of a title. It's just like, it's not really a bad name, but we kind of put a bad meaning to it. There's certain parts of the Bible where Jesus is described as a light bearer or a Lucifer type character.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
so we got to be careful, because I have actually seen like certain denominations, like wicked ones and bad translations, where they're kind of saying like, look, Lucifer and Jesus are the same character, they're both called Lucifer. And I've seen that kind of floating around, but again, it's just
yes, I have myself actually.
it's just a misunderstanding of the term. And then Beelzebub, uh there's so many uses for that, but that comes from the word Baal, from the old gods of Baal, which just means Lord. Baal means
Yeah.
Lord. And again, there are parts where, God really just kind of like one upped the old gods that were considered lords. And he was considered like the one above all these Baals. And there was even some descriptions in the Old Testament of him being like Baal. Like, for example, um, uh, there was a god, and I forgot his name right now off the top of my head, but he's basically like the Thor character in the Old Testament. He's a cloud rider. He's
Storm. It's a storm god. That kind.
Yeah, the storm god. He can control the weather and all kinds of stuff like that. And you see that kind of seep into the New Testament. And when Jesus comes along and he's like walking on water, uh, and then not only that, he like calms the storm when he was on the boat. And it blew everybody's mind in that area because in that area they specifically worshipped uh, that fallen entity, which was considered the storm god. Because
And
these
he's performing those acts.
exactly. And so he's not just doing that just to flex on us and say, "Hey, look at it! Look at this! I got powers." He's actually like face to face embarrassing the fallen entity that they worship in that area. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
Yeah.
and that's what he was doing to those considered demons or fallen entities or gods, because all these demons and fallen entities kind of work together.
Yeah.
In order to go and oppose God. And so that's why they'll take on names like Beelzebub, Lucifer, Satan, because in
Yeah.
essence, they are a type of Lucifer or a type of Satan or a type of Beelzebub, because what they're doing is they're opposing God. But we see those names. The names are very specific. I mean, especially
Yeah.
in the Old Testament, like they all have meaning. It's not like today where, my name's Chuck and that's it. There was no significance other than my parents liked the name. And
Yeah. I know what you mean. I know what you
but
mean.
even in like, like even in like if you watch movies like an old English movies or, like, Braveheart or anything like that,
Yeah.
the
Brave art.
name
Yes. And that.
the names are significant. Like everything is like, oh, you are of this lineage of that or whatever, and like in the
Yeah.
like in the Native American community, you are, Riverwind or whatever,
Yeah. They have
there's
some interesting names, don't they?
indeed. And so all these names are specific to something that they're doing, but
Yeah.
they're kind of adaptable names. So it's hard to say like, oh, this is the one demon of lust. There's only one demon of lust, and he goes around doing whatever he can. No, there's
Yeah.
multiple entities.
I bet
uh,
there's thousands in there. Thousands.
Oh yeah, there's I mean, God only knows really how many there are, but like they'll do things that others do and they'll give themselves those names.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have no idea what their actual names would be. A lot of them just like to say uh I am this name because that's what they're doing in someone's life.
Yeah.
I've met demons that will call themselves demons of with African names. They'll give
African
themselves
names.
like African deities,
Right.
and Brazilian in the Brazilian culture, they do a lot of African worship still, like because of all the slaves that came from over there to Brazil. So a lot of the demons that will incorporate in people when they manifest over there, they'll call themselves like Eshus, Orishas, stuff like that. It's like they have a demon that's considered the demon of lust, and it's called Pombagira, and they have all these demons that have certain names. They have a whole class of demons that are considered the snake class, which is
Right.
interesting.
Okay.
The re-
Would
like the
they be? Sorry, mate. Would they be seraphim angels with the mean snake?
Yeah, I don't know if seraphim, because like seraphim is not really an angel, uh,
Right.
and
Okay.
and seraphim, if you look at the Bible, like angel, like first of all, the word angel, that's another misconception, which is why I really like urge people to read Michael Heiser's book. He has one that was specifically focused on angels, and one
That's called.
specifically
Sorry, mate. Sorry. Sorry.
Good, and then he has another one specifically focused on demons. And both the misconceptions therein. And the misconception is that the ones that fell were angels, and those weren't angels neither. They were a different class. They're like God's kind of mentioning in Psalms 82. They're like their own class of Elohim or God, like their own entity. Which there's these
Yeah.
classes that we know. There's the seraphim, there's the cherubim, and then there's the angel servant class. Angel just means to be a messenger, you know,
Yeah.
and that's what the word actually means. So a lot of the times when God describes an angel in the New Testament, he's just saying that they're a messenger. They're not. That isn't the class that isn't what they are. It's their duty. Again, it's a title. You know what I mean?
Right,
and
right.
and so that's kind of often misconstrued. But I don't know, and I've never. I'm gonna assume, based on the history, that there was definitely a class that looked like reptilians that at one point rebelled against God, because
Yeah,
that is like there's so much architectural um historical like historical architectural proof that people believed in these snake type gods before,
yeah,
and every
yeah.
time they came around, they imparted a certain kind of knowledge to these civilizations and destroyed them. And not a single, not a single
Nice.
one of them, not a single one of them that has adopted the reptilian knowledge and the reptilian kind of religion is still around. Like we're talking about Peru, all the Inca stuff. We're talking about
Yeah,
Mexico. We're talking about the Central Americans, the Egyptian, like anywhere in the world, like that adopted it. Like the only thing that comes close is the Chinese that have kind of like the dragon, you know.
they have a lot
And
of dragon imagery, don't they, Chinese?
yeah,
A
yeah,
lot.
but the interesting part about that is that they weren't always that. They actually were more monotheistic many thousands of years ago, and then at one point someone had a dragon vision just like all the other civilizations, and they turned
Yeah,
into what they are now, and now they have like this whole dragon worship type thing, and it resembles the same story that's happened over and over history. I would say it's the same story of Prometheus took fire,
Prometheus. Yeah,
took fire, the fire of knowledge, and then gave it to the people, and it both destroyed them, but it also gave them the ability to have certain technologies they didn't have. And that's like the common trope that we have. That's why we call ourselves Fire Theft Radio, actually, and it's kind of a Prometheus reference,
so
of
mate, very, very clever. That very clever.
yeah.
I once thought of that myself.
Thank you. Yeah, no,
Very sneaky. I love that, mate.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love it.
no, but it kind of causes a little trouble because now some people are thinking like, oh, see, they're satanic, or because it's like a Lucifer
Tell you what,
reference.
mate.
And I'm like,
There's just some. There's a lot of idiots about him there. A lot
yeah,
of idiots.
no, it's just that they obviously haven't listened to
Fucking
the show if
quality, that, mate.
they think
Actually,
yeah, if they haven't listened to the show, if they actually think we're satanic, you know what I mean? But
well, each to their
anyway,
own, mate. But that's quality. How you've used it, and very clever. Very clever.
indeed, thank you. And so, like I said, there's all these references to all these entities passing on knowledge, and
Yeah,
that's still happening today with all the occult practices. And in Silicon Valley, for example, we have people doing microdosing, and they happen to see these reptilian creatures, and then they get knowledge from reptilian creatures, and then they create new technologies. I'm like, that's the same story for thousands of years,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's all these things that are coming from entities or demons from the other side. They're getting in contact with these entities, and it's just very prevalent. And I mean, demons really just seeps into all of our society, our music, our movies. I don't know if you want to go into that stuff, but I mean, there's demons
Yes,
everywhere.
please. Yeah, yeah. Whatever information you've got, more than greatly appreciated, Chuck.
All right. Well, again, there is the aspect, just to summarize, there's the aspect of demons just tearing up people's lives. That is a
Yeah,
real thing. You don't want to practice the occult. These are real things. I've experienced them firsthand. Supernatural things that are just not possible, like superhuman strength in people, in kids, and speaking different languages, contortions, and sicknesses that seem to be natural that disappear after they get delivered from these spirits and things like that. And then there's the aspect of demons affecting culture, and I think that's like the biggest thing that they're probably doing is they are very much like messengers. They are just trying to influence culture to be as depraved as possible, because depravity and sin is kind of like a gateway or kind of a window or a portal for these entities to really just get into your life and start possessing those who aren't Christian, especially. But they can oppress and kind of mess with Christians as well. We're not free from demons just because we believe in Jesus. You know, we have to
Yeah.
fight these battles as well. And if we're not careful and we're just kind of like too busy with our lives, just we're like, oh, we're cool, we're just living our lives. However, I mean, you got to be very careful, man, because you know, they don't care, man. They're gonna, if they can in some way or another destroy your life, they will. You know, the Bible makes it clear that, you know, Satan or these entities are, you know, walking around you like a roaring lion, seeking to whom they can devour. You know, and
Did
I think that,
the
yeah,
sorry, Chuck. Sorry.
you
It
were
can
saying,
wait. My question. It can wait. It can wait. Just carry on, please. Are you okay if we just quickly pop a question in?
yeah, go ahead.
Do they generally target religious people? Or if just say, for example, I'm not really a religious person, so to
Hmm.
speak.
Hmm.
Would I be a target for a demon or not? Or does it not matter?
No, I don't think it matters, and I think probably the one thing that Christians don't like, that the Bible makes kind of clear, is that if you're making a huge difference in people's lives and you're actually doing a lot of work for God, there tends to be more of an attack. But you also
Right. Okay.
you tend to be also more prepared, you know. And so I can tell you that I obviously don't like the fact that I would be attacked more. No one wants to be attacked in any way, you know. It can come in many ways or forms. It can be, you know, trouble with the family. You know, it could be trouble at work. It can be, you know, actual supernatural events like sleep paralysis, which I deem to be supernatural because once I learned about God and Jesus, anytime I had like like a shadow or any kind of, you know, sleep paralysis start to
Yeah.
happen, like go into my room while I was asleep, as soon as I get that name out, as soon as I prayed to Jesus, like it would stop instantly, you know. And
Right.
and so I was just like, all right, then, you know, there you go. And there was even stories of people that were abducted by, you know, quote unquote aliens, and they would pray to other gods and pray other religions, and the abduction would continue, you know, their whole thing, the whole process. But if they prayed to Jesus and God, it would stop immediately and they would
It's like a
end.
completely different circumstance.
Exactly. And so
That's
there's a
interesting.
lot of that. And so you understand that we're dealing with evil entities, and not all entities that are evil are demons neither, is what I'm trying to get at, you know.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of evil entities, if you, in case you missed it, that are not demons. They're not Nephilim spirits. They're just rebellious entities or divine, like lowercase g gods, or these people that were
Yeah.
part of God's council that rebelled, you know what I mean. And you'll have them, you know, those are kind of like the leaders. Those are the ones that are commanding demons and things like that, you know.
Yeah.
And so they are, like always, drivers of culture, because what they always wanted to do is have their own civilization and have people worship them, you know. We still
Yeah.
do that. We still have that today, very subtly, but now less subtle than before. But definitely influencing culture towards, you know, many ways that ancient pagan practices, and we don't realize, you know, our, like I was saying about the music earlier, our music was more than ever. It has some ancient symbols of portals, like you heard about the Astro World situation
Yeah.
with Travis Scott. His leading up to it, all the way to the end of that concert, there was symbols galore about conjuring spirits, about going through the portal, turning into a demon. There was Phoenix Rising imagery, which is all occult and Masonic imagery. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was hell imagery. There's this like old painting called, it's like a soul raver painting, and it absorbs
So
souls through
brave.
its mouth, you know. and
Right.
and so the imagery was all there. Like there's all these ancient imagery that's been used for so many years, and it was all in his concert, you know. And so we see a lot of that more often than not now, you know. and it's just out in the open. But before it got there, we started with, like, believe it or not, like the Beatles. We started with, like, the Rolling Stones, and Elvis Presley. Just a little bit, a little nudge towards sexual depravity, like a little bit. Let's just
Yeah,
move you over there. Towards the end
yeah.
of the
They give
Beatles.
it.
What was that?
But the Beatles, it's Sergeant Pepper's with on the picture at the front of the CD. There's Alistair Crowley's in
Yeah, that's
the
right. And
cluster of
towards
people.
towards the end of their career, a lot of their imagery was all related to the occult, to opening the pineal gland, to the New Age theosophy, to Aleister Crowley magic, and Rolling Stones the same thing. They're a lot more open. They have a lot of songs like "Sympathy for the Devil," and they worked
Yeah,
with they worked
yeah.
they worked with Kenneth Anger to make a certain
Kind of thing.
yeah, Kenneth Anger to make a documentary, and I forget what the name of that. I think it's the same name, but basically, like, Kenneth Anger works with a lot of occultists, like uh the Order of Templo Orientis or something like that, and
Yeah,
and
OTO, yeah.
yeah, and so there are all these people just connected to ancient magic, conjuring up spirits and demons, giving them music, and that music you cannot say. I mean, you know quite well, especially being from England, like how influential that kind of music was for the entire
Very
world.
influential. Very,
So
very.
then, when you look at older interviews of, for example, Freddie Mercury, same exact thing. He had this spirit muse, this other thing that just he had this theosophy that he was practicing, and he put it into his music. It's very anti-Christian. Um,
There's a lot do that, isn't there? Anti-Christian, a lot.
mhm.
And like you say, you realise when you know a little. I mean, I don't know a lot. The little I know, you sort of when you're watching something or telly or listening to something, you sort of you're trying to find stuff what potentially is of like a cult, like the symbols, the words they use.
Right. Yeah, you definitely hear the language. You hear, and then you hear their interviews where they're literally saying, like, oh, they kind of conjured up these lyrics that they felt like this spirit or entity gave them the song, and it came out of nowhere, and a lot of the
Yeah,
they
yeah.
use is just like, so you're conjuring, man. I mean, I think Jimmy Page is pretty big on that. He was forgot
He liked Alistair Crowley, didn't he? With Jimmy Page, yeah.
mhm.
He bought a Boleskine house.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
you know about that. And then that house was painted in blood, and they had a spirit room,
oh,
and
yeah,
he was obsessed with Crowley. And then, connecting it to today, the modern day Crowley would be Marina Abramovich, and she does all the same exact stuff that Crowley was doing. She has her own spirit room, her spirit closet, where she conjures up demons and everything. She carved a pentagram on her stomach,
what?
and
Carved the pentagon on the stomach.
yeah, she carved it with a knife, like she like carved it, and then she
As
was
you
the
do.
one. Yeah, yeah, right. You know, yeah, just a normal day in life, right?
Yeah.
But
I just want to carve a
in,
pentagon with Bella.
and of course, she holds these events where people like politicians that were connected to some pedophilia are involved, and she has very public meetings with, like, Jay-Z,
Yeah,
and
Lady Gaga and all that. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So all those folks are connected to her. She practiced Crowley. I mean, we can go on and on, but it's just like all of these people. When you listen to their interviews, they very openly speak. They say the words in which you can tell that they're conjuring up these spirits or demons or entities,
yeah,
giving them, their star power. And so, yeah, it's just more open now, more than ever. Really, it's just if you they openly say it. So if you don't believe it, you're just not listening to their words. You're not listening
yeah.
to, because they're just saying, like, yeah, no, we do this, but like they say it so nonchalant, like it's just, like part of my
It's just
life.
a
But
normal thing. Yeah, yeah.
right, right, but it's not. It's like very evil and occult.
Did you think there's any particular reasons why it's like? I mean, in my opinion, I think it's blew up. It's huge. you think there's anything that's triggered it, or is it this just something in, say, whatever they believe in, they're trying to make it happen?
Are you asking like, why do I think this is happening more and more, or?
Yeah, sort of, yeah. Do you think there's anything in that, or?
Well, I think, especially in our realms, I think they're really ramping up for a new age in our life. I don't want to say end of days, because me
Yeah,
personally, I don't hold, I don't, it's very possible end of days. Like, it's very possible that, like me being a believer in the Bible, that Jesus is returning. I just don't know when. I'm not one to be, oh, it's imminent, it's happening,
yeah,
because
yeah.
in reading the New Testament, like like if you read the book of Thessalonians and things like that, they thought
Thessalonians.
they thought it was happening already. Like that, they were like, dude, like Paul, did we miss it? Where because it, it should be happening, and so they already thought it was imminent at that time. And
Yeah,
Paul was like, no, it's not time yet. And there's some things that need to happen. And I think there's been pretty much a cycle of new world order attempts for in all of human history, and this could be one of those cycles. And they're really pushing towards that new world order again.
yeah,
And the only difference now is we have, the internet, we have technology that can really govern people a lot better than before. Before it was really done by the strong hand of
oh, for
war,
sure,
and
for
now
sure.
it's really like, we can control the food supply. We can, we have supply chain issues. We can control it. There's certain states here where, you can't go eat unless you're vaccinated, and things like that. So
Oh, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? It
yeah,
is
so
ridiculous.
there's you can
It's like that.
definitely
It's like that.
see. Yeah, you can definitely see that creeping up, and the music and all the artists and celebrities are doing that because they are pushing this propaganda, and it's the evil entities that they worship, that's given them their popularity, is pushing a new world order propaganda. So that's what's
Yeah,
happening. That's why it's happening so openly and so aggressively, because like Klaus Schwab has openly said, we are in the midst of at the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution, and we need celebrities and our modern propaganda, our music and movies to like I said earlier, control culture, you know,
yeah,
and have them go in that direction, which is one of the things that demons are special at. That's their specialty at, like
yeah.
uh, because they are kind of the foot soldiers to influence culture into the direction that it needs to go to in order to create this kind of new world order.
It's just, so basically they're experts at manipulating.
Oh yeah, I mean, think about it. The classic Faustian kind of story, like, we'll give you what you want. If you're do this and on a non-celebrity level, like, isn't it fantastic to just live a life of sin and go do whatever you want and indulge in anything? I mean, it's much easier and more fascinating to the body, at least, to not have self-restraint and just kind of give into all of your, you know lust and desire,
Yeah, just
which is something they also desired to feel, by the way, because they were so lust driven and blood driven, and they miss it, so they want to feel it. So the only way to do that is to possess a body. They want to have
yeah,
sex, they want to have, feel, the drugs and all that. They're the ones, their parents, the Nephilim spirits, their parents are the ones who introduced that knowledge to us, the drugs, and how to use plants for drugs, and how to even abort babies. Like, all that knowledge is watcher knowledge.
yeah. Well, Chuck, are you aware of what drugs they talk about then?
Well,
Or did they have a specific plant? Or
it doesn't say, when you read the book of Enoch, it doesn't say that in this specific thing, but it
yeah,
does that, it told them how to pretty much get a hold of, like, hallucinogens and things like that,
right,
which,
right,
which is not surprising to me, because there is something about drugs, obviously, that opens up that pineal gland. And there is something that pineal gland that connects us to the spirit world. But when it's done through the means of force or through the means of what the Watchers gave us, it's like forbidden, even in the actual Old Testament, not just the extra biblical material. It's like you don't practice sorcery. And when you look at sorcery, like, sorcery means, the actual word for sorcery is pharmakia. You know what I mean?
Pharmakia. Pharmacy.
Exactly.
Pharmakia.
Pharmaceuticals. So drugs, like
I think
actual.
you just threw me a little there, mate, with that.
Yeah.
Okay, mate.
No, yeah.
Wow.
So like when you see it in the New Testament, even in the book of Revelation, towards the end of days, it even talks about how there's going to be high levels of pharmakia happening, or sorcery, or pharmaceutical drugs, if you want to say. And so that kind of stuff is happening right now more than ever. It's like being forced on the world. So when I see stuff like that in the book of Revelation, and I see that happening now, I'm like, yeah, okay, this could be it. This could be the end of days. You know what I mean? Like, there's definitely some shenanigans happening that fits right into that.
That'd be an understatement, that joke.
Yeah.
Wow. Right, I have got a question on the Lesser Key of Solomon. Are you familiar with that book? Or its contents? The Lesser Key of Solomon.
Yeah, I just know about it, but I don't know much of,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like I think it's a list of 72.
Right.
Are there any connection with the list of 9 demons, or is it something completely different, like a different perspective?
Yeah, like I said, I don't know much, but I think the number 72, if it's correct, what you say, that's a very important number, because in the book of Deuteronomy, Deuteronomy 32 specifically, there was a lot of these Watchers or demons that rebelled against God. And pretty much after the Tower of Babel situation, and I don't know if you knew this, but when the Tower of Babel happened and all the nations broke up into these nations, the amount of nations, depending on the translation, but most translations have this, the amount of nations, the major nations, there's a lot of little nations that came out of it, but the amount of major nations that kind of came out of that was 72. Okay. And all 72 were pretty much governed by a different entity that ended up becoming a fallen entity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And later in the New Testament, Jesus comes on the scene and he starts making disciples, and he starts making, like all these followers, and he sends out 72 to go preach around the world, so that all the nations, pretty much, he's reversing what happened in the Tower of Babel, where in the Tower of Babel, they were all separated by language, and they were actually given over to another deity, another god, but those gods were supposed to bring them to the main god.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, got a little gas here.
You're right.
But they rebelled against him, all 72, or pretty much all of them, and then Jesus had to pretty much fix what they didn't, and he sent 72, and then to tie that with the day of Pentecost, if you've heard of that, in the day of Pentecost.
Not, mate, no.
What was that?
I have not, mate. No, what's it called? The day of
Pentecost. Yeah. So in the New Testament, there's an event where Jews and different people from around the world went over and received God, and they received the Spirit of God. But not only that, they received the ability to speak the languages from around the world. Okay. And so
felt like a gift from God.
Right. And so there was people there from around the world saying, like, wait, how are these people speaking our language? They're not from where we are, and they were instantly given that ability. That's literally the reverse of what happened in the Tower of Babel, where everyone was given a different language and they couldn't understand each other. And now over
Yeah.
here, he's finishing the job by now giving them a language so that everyone understands each other, you know?
Right.
So he's fulfilling a promise that he said from that moment on, like, hey, from this moment on, you guys are rebelling against me. You'll belong to these other gods and they'll bring you towards me. But then those gods also rebelled against God and created these like, separate nations. But he's like, don't worry, I'll fix that. I'll bring them all back to me. He sends out 72 representing the 72 fallen, and then he gives them the ability to speak the languages of the world so that he can bring them back to him, because that was the plan all along. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like that's happening like right before our eyes. And so all this stuff is relevant. Like these numbers are also very relevant, which is why on the opposite side, people who commit rituals will do them on specific dates, like 9/11, you know, like, March 22nd, 322, Skull and Bone Society, like that. A lot of tragedy happens on those days, you know? And
Yeah.
so numbers are important. So that's funny that you say 72. I don't know much about that specific book, but if it is 72 demons, that doesn't surprise me, because there was, that's exactly the amount of rebellious entities that we're talking about.
Fascinating, Chuck. I mean, it's like got the 72 demon names, and they've got sigils representing like specific sigils for each name. There's kings, dukes, princes, presidents, one called marquis. I just can't work out why would there be so many. But,
I'm not sure exactly why they would be, but I can tell you that a lot of them get assigned to families as well, which is like an ancient lineage thing. That's the Gary Wayne's specialty. And these
the bloodlines, is that the bloodline?
Right, because these bloodlines will go back, and they'll say they're literally, for example, like in the Greek and Roman, they'll say like, oh, my father was Zeus, my father was this god or that god. And so there's a lot of religions in the secret society world that believe the same, that they came from these ancient Nephilim bloodlines like that. Now, some of them is hard to prove that it's true, or but that actually doesn't matter. What matters is that they believe it's true, and because they believe they come from these Nephilim bloodlines, they're are doing horrible things in society kind of secretly, because they're trying to bring about like a new world order type agenda using their family bloodlines. And so they'll have demons or spirit guides, they'll call them. They won't call them demons, they'll call them spirit guides, or they'll call them attached to that family, but they're really not spirit guides. They're just ancient demons that have been working with this family for a long time,
Yeah. I'll be talking like thousands and thousands of years as well, most likely.
What was that?
I'll be talking for like thousands of years.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, they're just waiting. These demons are waiting for judgment. They're going to be destroyed, according to the Bible, in the lake of fire when the final judgment comes. Yeah. But until then, they don't belong in heaven or hell. They're just kind of like lingering around. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's mind blowing, Chuck. It's it's just so much. I mean, like looking into these, you could probably talk for hours and hours talking about each demon. There's that many. I mean, are they all like all the 72 and the 9? I know Satan's in the 9 mentioned, but are they all sort of in that rebellious? Are they all rebellious? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Against God. Against God.
Yeah, definitely. I've never heard
some good demons.
Yeah, no, I've never heard of a good demon, and I've never heard of a
No,
like a
I've not.
good
No.
Nephilim spirit. Like they'll
Yeah.
I have heard of them pretending to be good. There are definitely rogue ones where they're trying to just do their own thing. Like I'm not part of a group. Like
Yeah.
and there's things like that. And I'm sure people have had positive experiences with their muses or spirits that they're conjuring, and they're assuming that they're good. But again, you have to really weigh your life out if you're dealing with stuff like that, and say, well, let me look at my life. Like, is there more pros than cons? Because most of the time there's more cons than
Yeah.
pros. And even if there is pros all the way through, you're going to take a big gamble on the afterlife. Because let's just say, I tell a couple of my atheist friends, because in the end, like, both a Christian and an atheist are using faith to determine what they believe in.
Yeah.
Because I don't know for sure that when I die, I'm going to go to what I understand to be the afterlife as a Christian. Like, I just believe that. I believe,
Sort of like a heaven type.
right. Like, I believe it based on, circumstantial evidence. Like, there's these other things that are true, that have been proven to be true, that are in the Bible. There are so many things, like I just told you about the pharmakia and the timing of that. And that's one of thousands and thousands of things that we can bring out that have just happened historically, that have happened
Yeah.
scientifically, that the Bible was talking about way before anybody was talking about it. So
Yeah.
there's all that, but none of that proves for sure that when I die, like, I go to where I'm supposed to go. That part of it is completely taken on faith, and I'm believing it based on all this other information that is available. You know what I mean? But it's still
Yeah.
faith. I don't know until it happens. And the atheist perspective is you die and nothing happens. Just darkness. Darkness forever. You're done. You sleep
Yeah.
forever. Right? That also takes faith. Like, you don't know that. Like, you don't know that. And again, they would say,
You're
well,
not going to know it, are you?
what was that?
You're not going to know it, are you, until it actually happens, and then
Right. Exactly.
can't come back and it's yeah.
Right. And so, they can say, well, see, we can measure that your consciousness is gone, you're asleep. And I'm like, yeah, but, like, there's, again, circumstantial evidence that kind of says, no, there's probably nothing.
Yeah.
So the end result is you're using faith. You're using faith. Sorry for all the noise in the background. We're already working on stuff
Oh,
outside.
it's fine, mate. It's
Yeah.
fine, mate.
And so my point of that is just like we're using faith here, okay? We're
Yeah.
using, actually, what was my point? Where was I going? I don't remember. Where was I going? What were we talking about?
Using faith
Yeah, yeah.
as the like for the using faith against the demon, sort of,
Oh, well, I think we
and
were
with
talking
the
about good or
afterlife.
bad things or whatever.
Yeah, and the afterlife.
Yeah, and so, but I guess going back to the demon thing is no, I don't think there's good demons. There's just ones that pretend. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
then there's definitely ones that want to bargain with you, and things like that. And but, like, you're looking at your life and you see, like, is this good or bad? Oh yeah, my point is the most important aspect is, like, let's say you do deal with a demon and your life is actually magnificent all the way to the end of your life. But
yeah,
as the Bible would say, what good is it that you won the world but you lost your soul? You know what I mean? Like, are you willing to take that risk and you lose your soul, and now you're going to pay for that eternally? And or let's say I'm wrong and the atheist is right.
yeah,
The only thing I lose is I didn't have as much as fun as I could have when I died.
yeah,
And that's it. But it's over for me. In the end, it's over for me. But if the atheist is wrong, then you're going to pay for that for a lot longer than a whole lifetime. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So you
yeah,
got to weigh the consequences when it comes to that. Like, do you want to deal with God, or do you want to deal with demons, or do you, as for the atheist, do you want to even believe in none of this stuff, or do you want to just continue being an atheist? But there's definitely some very serious repercussions that you might have to pay in the afterlife. So I would choose very wisely.
yeah. Obviously, yeah, you're going to, aren't you?
Mhm.
But I mean, like you said, from what I've read and heard, and from your phenomenal knowledge, I can't see there being any good ones. Is there anything else you think that would be worth sharing?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff, but I mean that I just kind of gave you like an overview of
Yeah,
what demons can do.
fantastic overview, Chuck. A fantastic overview.
Yeah. But again, if people are interested in stuff, I highly recommend those kind of books, like the Michael Heiser Angels, and then there's the Demons book, the Unseen Realm. It really gets into the weeds of what these entities do, and how they work against God and against people, and things like that. So I recommend those books highly.
I want to have a look, see if I can find them actually when we finish speaking.
Yeah.
Sound very interesting.
Yeah, no, they're very good. I mean, they're very knowledgeable. It's easy to digest, even though it's kind of like a knowledgeable biblical stuff. But I mean, if you can get through a lot of the information, you'll find those really good, easy to digest nuggets as well. Of like, oh yeah, like demons are not fallen angels, and angels are not, a class in and of itself. It's just a title as well, and like all that stuff is explained pretty well there.
Yeah. Thank you. What I wanted to ask you is, it might sound a bit weird, this, but with the these, well, the demons show ain't no, they're not angels, are they? The demons, the Nephilim. With you we're talking about hybrids at one point. Do you think that these Nephilim spirits with the bestiality exclamation marks? Do you think that they've created some of the cryptids what have come to knowledge lately, like dogmen, for example, skinwalkers, Sasquatch? Do you think that it's all sort of linked in a way?
Yeah, no, I would say so. I would say definitely, and a lot of the information is coming out. The reason I would say so for sure, definitely, because I've seen actual peer-reviewed scientific papers that have come out, and they're saying, "Oh, we're trying to create hybrids." Like it's not even a thing like they're hiding anymore. Like we're trying to create. We're trying to make this animal with that animal, even human beings or human parts into animals. And so they're essentially doing animal human hybrids, mixing DNAs, and there's a lot of like, what they call techno sorcerers. Like there's all these, yeah, they're called like pretty much they're like I said earlier, it's a fancy kind of weird, cool term to be like people that are like using technology, but they're using black magic and sorcery to get that technology, and so, and they're part of the religion of that belief is to bring about Nephilim again, to bring them back, the return of Nephilim, because in their mind's eye, it's beautiful. It's like a return of the gods kind of thing, And so myth is more and more becoming reality, and I would argue that the mythological world was never not fake. It was turned into something fake because of our historians and people that were hiding God. That's a long conversation, but I mean, throughout history, it's been proven that historians, like people in charge of the Smithsonian and things like that, have been hiding giant bones that they was their job to.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Anytime there was any proof that there was Nephilim or giant humans, that they would just pick them up or they would say it was dinosaur bones instead of giant bones, and things like that. So that's definitely a thing, and they've been hiding that. But now now that it's more out in the open, they're pretty much saying that we're trying to bring back these kind of Nephilim hybrids, and they're trying to make it sound awesome. And the number one propaganda to make everyone okay with that is Disney's Marvel movies, which are all about that.
Yeah.
And that's like the number one thing. They, for the last almost 15 years, however long the first Iron Man came out.
The,
That all of they've pushed is the merging of technology with humans and the merging of genetically modifying humans to turn them into superheroes. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
And they're basically just saying, look, dude, this is awesome. And who hasn't bought into that? Who hasn't said, I want to be like Captain America, I want to be like Superman, I want to be like, I mean that's a different I know that's DC. Calm down, folks. For all of those people are saying, hey, that's a DC character, not a Marvel. You know, but
all the same,
but all the same, it's the same propaganda. They're modifying humans to become gods. You know, they even use like
Yeah.
Shazam is the whole. If you break down like what Shazam means, it's all ancient gods. You know, that's like Hercules and whatever. And I don't know the names all of all of them, but everything, we're surrounded by the ancient world. Like our planets are named after ancient gods. You know, our
Yeah.
our days and our months are named after ancient gods. Like January is from Janus. You know, and like Monday is Moon Day. You know, like Thursday is Thor's Day. You know, Saturday is Saturnalia. Like everything is literally connected to the ancient gods of old, and they have been working on bringing back that golden age, that reality that used to exist, you know, during the days of Noah. And so that is now more achievable than ever because of the genetic splicing and all the CRISPR technology and all that stuff. The transhuman movement, where we want to make humans half technology, half human, and all of that's connected, man. And it's all coming into fruition, man. It's happening.
Yeah, seems that way, mate. It does. It does. Do you think there's anything else, Chuck?
No, I think that's all I got to say. My throat hurts.
Well, you blew my mind, mate. That's a fascinating perspective, information.
Yeah,
definitely, I'm going to be looking for Michael Hauser and see what books I can find on him.
Yeah. I'll send you some links. You know.
Oh, brilliant! That'd be fantastic. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Chuck. Phenomenal episode. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all, man. Glad to be on.
Okay, I'd love to have you on again as well, if that's all possible.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's work something out.
Yeah, no problem, mate. Well, it's your morning now, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a little afternoon. You know.
Have a nice day, mate.
You.
And I shall speak to you soon.
Got it, man. I'll see you, dude.
All right, thanks, Chuck.
All right, man. Bye.
Cheers, mate. Bye. Bye.